Jack Fritz alongside Ike Reese on this Tuesday afternoon. What's happening, Ike?
Fritzy, I'll let your boy.
Have you dried up all your tears off the Kelce speech yesterday?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah, all right, that's good. Listen, it was an emotional day. I guess it was an emotional day here on WIP. And obviously you can continue to react to it on 215-592-9494. But, now that Kelce's gone, I can't help but think about, obviously, next year's team and where this team is going to go from here. And Fletch seems like he might be retiring as well. And I'm just starting to come more and more to the realization for me that my expectations have definitely gone down or they've been lowered. And I'm definitely thinking more about not 2024 being an all-in, push all your chips in, we got to go, go, go. Instead, I am starting to come around on the idea of 2024 is about finding our next core, finding the next group of leaders, finding the next Jason Kelce and Fletcher Coxes so that 2025 and beyond are really good for this team. I think it's unfair to still have Super Bowl expectations for this team after the Kelce and Cox retirement, Ike.
Huh?
Yes.
After the Kelce and Cox retirement. So if they were still here, we would have Super Bowl aspirations?
There's still Super Bowl aspirations if Kelce's back.
Well, if Kelce is back, okay. And maybe even if Fletcher is back, you sort of feel that way. But
It's a good rotation.
I think it's independent of those guys and what they're going to do moving forward. We already know Jason Kelce is retiring. We'll find out what Fletcher Cox is planning on doing with his career. But I just don't see where this should have an impact as far as what the goal should be for next year. And I just don't believe the Eagles believe in lowering their expectations. I just don't believe that. Hey, they want to go in, unless you're absolutely in sort of a rebuilding mode, meaning that you're looking for your quarterback, i.e. you draft Carson Wentz in 2016. And even then, not necessarily saying they were trying to win the Super Bowl, but they weren't necessarily throwing the towel in on the season until Teddy Bridgewater went down in Minnesota and they decided to trade Sam Bradford then. But until then, Sam Bradford was going to be the starting quarterback going into the season that year.
Yeah.
He was.
And they had who's the receivers he's throwing to? J-Matt. Was J-Matt here in 2016?
Jordan Matthews.
And then Treggs and Dorial Green Beckham.
Yeah, as I said, I'm not saying they were trying to go to the Super Bowl. My point is that they weren't throwing away a season just to watch the quarterback develop. Sam Bradford was going to be the quarterback here. He was here until Teddy Bridgewater got injured and they offered up a first-round draft pick. Now, this situation is very different. We're in a much more advantageous situation than they were in 2016, which is why I say there's no way, no reason that they should be looking to punt on next year. And that's essentially what you're saying. When you're saying developing guys and looking for the next core, you're basically saying winning doesn't matter next year.
It's not priority number one.
Yeah, that's nonsense.
Still win.
That is nonsense.
Still make the playoffs.
Well, how do you think they're going to make the playoffs?
They have enough talent to make the playoffs.
We got to win games to do that.
I know. I'm not saying you're going to tank the season, but it's about finding the next core here. It's about who is the next group of Eagles. There's so much turnover on this team, Mike. You're losing Jason Kelce, so you have to replace that.
That player's already here.
Cam Jurgens already here. Who's the right guard?
I don't know.
It could be Tyler Steen. Maybe they go out in free agency. But last year, even with Jason Kelce on that line, I think we could agree that it seemed like the offensive line took a bit of a step back. They weren't. I thought they lived off pedigree with last year's offensive line more than what they were actually putting on the field. There's a ton of turnover on the defense as well. I mean, Hassan Reddick might not be here. Now they could replace him.
That'd be a mistake if Hassan Reddick is not here and they don't replace him.
Sure, they could replace him. Or he's here. Regardless, Sweat took a huge step back last year. Jalen Carter's in year 2. Jordan Davis is in year 3. Fletcher Cox is not a part of that rotation anymore. He's out. BG, what is he giving you in year 13 or year 15?
Leadership.
He's giving leadership, which is fine. Yeah. They're going to have a whole new linebacking core, probably.
Good.
Which is it's not a terrible thing, but it's probably going to be younger players from that standpoint, new players in the secondary, maybe another cornerback. It's a ton of turnover. It's a ton of things that have to go right for next year to be this team can be back in the Super Bowl kind of year.
Yeah, my point is that's what they should be striving to do. And you're looking at the roster as it presently sits. And that hasn't gone through free agency. It hasn't gone through trades or any of those things where they're going to be able to enhance the talent on both sides of the football. So you're telling me you're good with basically sitting on our hands in free agency, not adding any real talent, right? Because we're trying to develop young guys here. We're not trying to bring in guys that are actually better than any of these players that can actually help us win games, possibly win playoff games and get to the Super Bowl. Right? We're not bringing in any of those type of guys.
Well, I don't need huge contracts being given out with the focus being on next year.
I don't care about the contract. I care about players. Like 1 year deals is what got us to the last 2 Super Bowls. It wasn't huge contracts. So I'm not concerned with how we hitting a home run with some free agent that everybody's going to be excited about. That's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about adding quality veteran players that have played in this league and that understand what it means to win football games that can complement what we have offensively. That is the strength of this team. You just need to have an adequate defense, a defense that doesn't have that doesn't leak, right, where you're just giving up 25, 30 points every weekend. This offense should be able to put up 25 to 30 points every weekend, providing they add the right type of running back to go along with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts. You add the right type of running back there, the running game there, along with Kellen Moore on the offensive side of the ball. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to, A, win this division, B, put yourself right in position to either be playing in the Super Bowl or, at worst, playing in the NFC Championship game next year. There are no teams that are head and shoulders above the Eagles that the Eagles should automatically look at next season like we should just throw this season away. We have no chance to win. What team in the NFC is head and shoulders above the Eagles? Tell me the 49ers are?
I would say the 49ers are.
But aren't the 49ers going to take the step back that every Super Bowl losing team takes?
They could.
So,
but they've also been in what? 4 of the last 5 NFC Championship games?
Which makes it even more likely they'll take a step back.
Maybe. Sure.
Okay.
I still think that on paper I would take the Niners over the Eagles.
All I'm saying is they aren't a lock to be in the NFC Championship game next year. That's all I'm saying.
Nope.
Cowboys?
I still think they're ahead of the Eagles, but
you do?
Yes, I do think.
In what way?
I think they have a better quarterback. I think they have a more talented defense. I think they have the same amount of weapons on offense. Maybe they lose Tyron Smith. I think that hurts. Mike McCarthy, obviously.
I think the offense is equal at worst. Forget about going through individual stuff.
Okay.
Forget about all that.
Defense is
I like
better.
our skill position guys. I'll take Jalen, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert over the Cowboys skill position guys, including Dak Prescott.
Sure. I'll take Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence.
Okay, but I just started on the offense. I said they're at worst even.
Okay.
We know the Eagles' defense is terrible. That's a wasted exercise to go through.
Agree.
And that's why you can change all of that by adding players.
Lions?
About adding players. The Lions? What about the Lions?
I think the Lions are better than the Eagles.
Okay. We mean head and shoulders better than the Eagles? What?
Better than the Eagles.
Better than the Eagles? Slightly better than the Eagles?
Definitely better, not head and shoulders better.
Yeah, I think a move or two can have you right there with the Lions. And see, that's sitting there looking at teams now. That's looking at the teams now. That's why I'm saying you can add players, and you're right there where those teams are. Those teams aren't great teams. Green Bay, none of those teams are great teams. None of those teams. And we'll see how the Lions handle success and everything else, and can they do it again this year. One thing I know, the Eagles have been in the playoffs 6 out of the last 7 years, so they know how to handle success. They're a perennial playoff team. That's what we call a perennial playoff team. The rest of these teams aren't perennial playoff teams with the exception of the 49ers.
215-592-9494. I'm curious where people are at with the Eagles after the Kelce.
Can't give up on a season.
After the Kelce and Fletcher Cox seemingly retiring, where are you at? Like, is next year still Super Bowl expectations for you? Or have they been lowered with Kelce no longer being here? And like, one of my big concerns with the free agent stuff, and maybe I'm off base here. I could be off base 100%. But I really am curious as to, again, the leadership structure of this team. And I know it fell apart last year with the Kelces, with the BGs, with the Fletcher Coxes here. So I fully understand that. But with going and getting free agents in the past, in those years he made the playoffs 6 out of 7 years, and when you brought in these 1-year guys and they worked out, I felt like there was already an established, core here or an Eagles way of doing things. And I wonder, with a head coach that might be on the hot seat, with new leadership turnover, like, who is the guy in the locker room that everyone is turning to and saying, like, all right, he spoke up today. Now
A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Maybe.
Well, I mean, that's –
No, I know. Like, A.J. Brown, I guess, is one of those guys.
Lane Johnson.
I mean –
Jordan Mailata. Listen, you're the one who told me that Jalen doesn't need to be the leader.
Well, so
I'm not even. I'm going by your criteria. I'm not even adding him to the equation.
But I think what I figured out more as now I think about Kelce retiring, it seems like the Eagles knew Kelce was retiring, and maybe that's why they're pushing the Jalen as the.
Oh, you think so?
How's that?
It finally dawned on you.
How's that for the light bulb going off in my head?
Oh, you think so?
How's that? How's that? Like, that's why they're pushing it the whole time.
Sure, they are.
But that shows me I think they're worried about the leadership structure too.
Well, I mean, no, it just says that they are making guys aware that you're not going to have the crutch of leaning on Fletcher and Jason Kelce anymore. So somebody else has to be able to step up, and that's the one guy who they know is going to be here. And you're right. That's why they're pushing and urging him to be more of a vocal leader.
Yeah. So,
but if he's not ready next year, we got AJ.
Okay.
And Devontae.
And Devontae's
right.
Day one.
Listen. No. See, the one thing that I sort of discovered a couple weeks ago when AJ stood up to the bully, called up to talk to the media and everything. This is what everybody wants. So this is what we should encourage.
Him standing up and being
him being the leader. Him being the leader of the team. This is what everybody wanted.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? This is what he was doing. He was standing up, being a leader, voicing, standing up for his teammates.
The media,
Jalen isn't that guy, so AJ does it. Yeah. Okay.
All right. The spotlight's on.
Okay.
But is it fair to be concerned about stuff like that? I mean, I haven't been in an NFL locker room. Mm-hmm. Is it a fair concern of next year you bring in, let's say they go out and get like a Christian Wilkins if they want to go get him?
Oh, that's another good
I know, yeah. Now, do you think that's too many defensive tackles? I mean, are we building a defensive tackle only kind of team? But like, let's say they go get some of these. They bring in a new safety. They bring in a new cornerback. They bring in a guy on the line. They bring in a linebacker to go with all the draft picks. Like, is it a fair concern that who is the voices in the locker room, especially even on the defensive side? Like, if Reddick's not here, who's the established vet? BG, obviously. There's no one else. I mean, Sweat's there, but like, are you listening to Josh Sweat?
I mean, they may have to. He has to step up and be that guy. Listen, all I know is that leaders leave from time to time on teams, and it allows for the next guy to be able to step up, and now he becomes a little bit more of a vocal leader. His presence is felt a little bit more in the locker room, where they may have taken a back seat to Kelce, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, guys of that nature. Now your voice gets to stand up and be the voice that's heard. If you want to assume that role. Like, somebody has to want to assume that role. See, I've always worried less about that because I think the Eagles' culture overall develops leaders. It does. Now, they identify guys. There's certain qualities and characteristics they view in guys that they view as leadership traits, and then you hope those guys actually turn into leaders as they get older, from young men to being grown men. And who knows? That takes a year. That takes 2 years. That takes 3 years. I don't know. To each player could be different. But Kelce's not going to be here. It seems like Fletcher isn't going to be here. BG will still be here, but even his voice, as respected as it is, starts to lose a little bit more weight each year. It just does. It's only natural. The longer that you're somewhere, sometimes your voice, they know you're there and they respect you, but you don't necessarily carry the day for everybody in the locker room.
Right. I mean, Lane's there, too.
Yeah, and you got Lane there. He has to be a little more vocal.
Yeah. Well, because it's obviously a lot like, when Troy and those guys left your team.
Yep.
It just You could see the Trotter coming along, the Dawkins on offense. B West.
But Sheldon Brown he became a little bit more of a vocal leader.
Yeah.
B West became a little bit more of a vocal leader. Trey Thomas became a little bit more of a. See, those guys were leaders. It didn't mean we didn't have leadership traits, just that we didn't have to do it because those guys were the leaders. And plus, you didn't want to be stepping on their toes. So then, as they walked out the doors, other guys had to step up and become a little bit more vocal.
Right. 215-592-9494. After the Jason Kelce retirement and the possible Fletcher retirement, have your expectations changed for next year's Eagles? Are you focusing more on 2025 and beyond or 2024? Where do you come down on that? Get in now, 215-592-9494.